I would like to start with the reactions from our esteemed guests from the Parliament and then from the Commission. First of all, the representative of the Renew Group, Michal Wiezik. Michal, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this event today. I appreciate it very much to be in the presence of so many esteemed scientists and capacities. And I'm also very, very fond of hearing to what your assessments of the current situation actually are. And especially the analysis of Professor Milston was very, very close to my heart. Going to the root of the problem at the same time, but also showing how actually complex the issue is and how a solution that might be based on some simplistic steps is simply not possible, because we are really living in a very complex world where not only facts are being considered, as you presented very well, but many other aspects and factors are also part of the game. And the outcome of the game is concentrated around sort of a compromise that is able to win the majority of the votes in the House, and hence being driven by the democratic principles of deciding majority. And this is sometimes, or usually, by the definition, it's the pain in the ass. Let's say it like that. So I'm sorry for my vocabulary. I myself have come to this House from a scientific community. I'm an ecologist with my expertise, professor, associate, whatever, that doesn't matter right now. But I was really part of that environment where a scientific outcome was really being assessed and scrutinized thoroughly before being published. You all know that drill, you know, the peer review process, all that stuff. You have to have really solid arguments in order to step forward with something and some sort of recommendation. And I really was thinking that this should be somehow reflected really as a fundamental aspect in the decision-making process on the European level. I was quite surprised to actually recognize that it's not like that. The imperative of the compromise is very general, let's say like that, or omnipresent in this environment. Just one example, very let's say well, academic one or theoretical one. Imagine that there is a problem of one guy being stranded somewhere in the ocean, and if he wants to save his life, he has to swim to the closest island, which, based on the scientific measurings, is 2 kilometers ahead from him. You know, so it's really certain that he needs to swim 2 kilometers in order to reach that point of saving his life. But in this House, we would actually negotiate about that. You know, there are different groups with different point of views or different paradigms on that issue, and some might argue that okay, he has a certain amount of energy, and they would doubt whether it is really crucial to use all that energy only into that swimming, or maybe he could invest it also in some other activities, for instance, like checking for some trace minerals or fish stocks around, you know, around that path. Some families might argue that why should he actually swim? Why should he really follow that Brussels dictate and doesn't decide to do anything else, or just stay at the point, you know? And some might just, within these merits, argue of how much of the distance he should actually go across. There would be some groups who would very thoroughly follow the scientific advice to go for 2 kilometers. There would be some groups who would actually know that if they want to reach that volume, they should ask for more. And some groups would definitely know that they should ask for something less in order to somehow outbalance the other groups. So at the end of the day, we probably might end up with something like 1.6 kilometer as a sort of universal compromise that might win the majority. That would be a great compromise from the political point of view, because everyone supporting it would be equally unhappy about that, you know. So yeah, that would be a great success. Probably 60% of the House would be voting for that figure. As a matter of fact, that guy would drown because he would miss 400 meters in order to reach the shore. If you think that this is an absurd example, just recall our vote in 2019, where we were negotiating about the need for emissions reduction until 2030. There was a scientific advice that if we are going to reach the carbon neutrality in 2050, we need to reduce the emissions by at least 60% compared to the reference level in 1990s. We end up, or no, it was 65. It was 65 back then, the lower limit, and we end up with 55. Is it with the very same principle? Like we didn't follow the science. We negotiated with the science in a way and ended up with the number that was, from the perspective of previous goals, very ambitious. Let's say like that. It was a huge success, but it was not enough. And this is what's happening in this House from the very beginning. We are doing compromises with facts that never can be accurate enough, but that's the part of the game, and I don't have a remedy for that. This is the rules, the games is played with, and the only mission that I am trying to really be successful in is somehow to find out how to navigate during these rules in order for the outcome to be the best possible. Because the policy is the art of the possible. Is it like that? Yeah, I'm not sure about the right definition of that. So it's never easy. It's never easy. And you stressed a lot of the critical aspects of that, and I'm very, very thankful for that. Unfortunately, not too many of our colleagues are sitting in this House to properly contemplate on that. Because one aspect was not mentioned, beside all of those limitations that were presented. I think that many of the colleagues in this House and anywhere else on the political platforms simply have the luxury to not to follow the science, but to ignore it completely. I mean, the decisions are not, or in recent times, if you follow the trends, the decisions are not made based on what is being written in the scientific papers, but mostly what is being written on Facebook and X, and on social media. And it's also part of the game. And we need to somehow tackle that new tendencies, which are detrimental, let's say like that, very openly. These are not wise path to follow, it's really, but it's the reality. You somehow need to navigate through that as well. What I am missing in the whole process is that we can arrive at some sort of decision that might be simply not correct, despite there might be an eventuality that we have been warned prior to the decision by scientists, and it's very oftenly the case. Thank you for that huge effort for us, but that doesn't guarantee that we will follow that advice, as I mentioned already. What I am missing in the whole process is what happens after the approval of that position. What I'm missing is actually some sort of a peer review process before that can't be done by the scientists, that can be done by other politicians, because we are not peers to each other. We are opponents, let's say like that. So there is no objectivity within that process of counterbalancing our positions. But what I am actually really missing, and that might improve the situation quite heavily, is the sort of post hoc assessment, or how can I stress this? If the scientists actually warn us that if you do this, then it will have a detrimental effect, they should also do the next step and say, you have done that despite our warnings, and you are actually there the one to be blamed. The name and shame principle is not very, very present in the whole process, in the whole assessment, and that's why even the public will never actually realize and get to know that these outcomes are not good because we didn't know, but quite contrary to that. We knew, and even though we went the way that somehow impacted the public very negatively in the outcome. So our only peer reviews in right now is the public, actually. You know, they are actually there to judge, but only in the frequency of 4 or 5 years, which is not frequent enough. And let's be frank, the public doesn't consist only of experts. They are rather the subjects of our decisions who are being exposed to the impacts, but who have then the right to actually choose whether they will be impacted by the same guys and by the same wrong decisions again and again, which sort of is really a very, very, very peculiar system. So this is my insight into that. I prepared a lot of examples from my career when precaution principle was not followed, the best available science was not followed, but I don't need to stress them right now. This is really the essence of the problem, that it's very good to see that there is interest to tackle that, and I hope that we will someday will be able to actually tackle that, improve that situation. But right now we are really facing threats that are quite unprecedented in the last decades, but very precedented in the last century. The rise of far-right extremism, the rise of false claims, the rise of misinformation is everywhere, is part of our environment. And I think that the policymakers who actually are willing or are based on reflecting on facts, on the actual science, on the best advice from the scientists, are on the same side as the scientists themselves, because we all are being targeted by those extremists right now. We all are being blackmailed, we all are being attacked, and by this happening, the society and the future of society is being jeopardized as well. So I am very happy for today's event. I'm very happy that so many capacities, so many brains, so many professors and researchers are there, aware of the situation, trying to navigate it, trying to tackle it, trying to give us advice. But at the end of the day, it will be the people who will decide whether this advice will find some respondent or not, and whether the respondent will have the mandate to actually change the situation or not. So good luck with all of that, and thank you very much for your beautiful effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michal Wiezik, for this very clear talk. The imperative of the compromise, that expression will stick in the back of my mind, or rather in the front of my mind, with the horrible reality behind it. The next speaker will be from the EPP group, the European People's Party and the European Parliament, Manuela Ripa. Mrs. Ripa, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm also an ecologist, and you don't find many ecologists in my group, to be very honest. So I will speak here on my behalf and not on behalf of the EPP group. I can really subscribe everything that has been said, everything. I'm a mother. I'm also very much regarding consumer protection, very much into nature protection. I take the precautionary principle extremely serious, no question about it. And I can subscribe also a lot what Michael just said, but I just would like to maybe highlight another point, another obstacle that we are facing. I would like also, I mean, I have a speech here saying everything that we have to support you, that we have no action should be delayed. We should listen to independent science. We need to have more democratic process, no question about it. But what is the reality in the European Parliament? And I maybe will use that in order to just give you an example. I mean, you're here in this house, you're coming with a plea, and I would like also, like Michael, would like to highlight you what the truth is at the moment here in this house, and why maybe the precautionary principle is not so listened to than it should be. I mean, we also have here the European Commission present. In the last legislation, we presented the European Green Deal. It was a great package of legislation, really trying to put things right, like emission reduction, also trying to have less toxic chemicals in our products. We had the farm to fork strategy from the agricultural fields to our table with less pesticides. I mean, it was all there. You know, what happened with the pesticide regulation? The pesticide regulation was about not to forbid pesticide. It was just to say, use it as the last resort, because our biodiversity is declining in a terrible way. It is very bad for the environment, very bad for our health. So we have to use less pesticides. What happened? You all know it. It was voted down. And regarding precautionary principle, REACH regulation, I mean, there are so many toxic substances in our cosmetics, things that children use more and more. And I had a lot of discussions with enterprises saying, yeah, but if you don't want to have these substances, carcinogenic substances, these substances like the endocrine disruptors in these products, then we have to get rid of 3/4 of our products. And I was like, yeah, then get rid of it. I don't want to have these substances in our products who are really risky for our health. But what happens if they have to reduce 3/4 of our substance? And this is something that I would like to bring to the table that we haven't discussed yet. Then these companies, of course, have to close. I mean, I would be very happy if they are trying to find innovation. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to defend them. I'm the first one saying, try to find innovations that are not toxic, that are good, and there are a lot. But what happens? Okay, if they're not so fast, and then you also know that there are a lot from the outside are important things that don't have our standards, then they have to close. And what happens? People don't have work. And what happens then? We all saw it in the last elections. The right-wing parties went up, because they are going to say, you don't have to change everything. Everything's fine. There is no climate change. This stupid toxic products does not exist. All the people who are warning are liars, blah, blah, blah. This is the reality in our house. And unfortunately, voters also want to hear that, or they don't care, or whatever. So this is the reality we're facing. We can apply the precautionary principle, then our manufacturers will close, and we only have right-wing people sitting here. I'm extremely extreme here. I'm very sorry for this. No, let's try to be innovative, but you also have to understand that we need to take the people with us. Science is there, the evidence is there. We would like to act, but we also need to take people with us. This is very, very important. And I think that's the most important lesson of the last legislative term of the European Green Deal, that sometimes it went too fast, and it was not the right approach, because people felt, okay, they're overburdening us and I can't cope with it. And then we have the consequences that we have now, that everything is trying to be rectified. Everything is going backwards. So I would really just love to say, we need you, we need independent science, we need more democratic process. I am fully behind you, but also help us in a way that we also take the people with us, and that we can in the end achieve what the European Green Deal wanted to achieve, to have a healthy planet. But it doesn't go everything immediately, even if I would wish so. But we have to also act in a way that it's good for the planet and the people and the economy. This is the biggest thing that we have to achieve at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ripa. You presented us with another horrible dilemma from practical reality. Then we get to three speakers from the European Commission. First of all, from DG Agriculture and Rural Development, Mr. Luis Vivas-Alegre. He is Head of Sector of the Research and Innovation Unit of DG Agri. Mr. Vivas, please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to really acknowledge that this event was an opportunity for us in the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development of the Commission, but more specifically looking at the research and innovation dimension, which is what we do. And this is where I'm coming from also, in order to address this roundtable. And it was an opportunity to look at where the aspects and the dilemmas that you put through in the recommendations of the 2025 conference were providing opportunities perhaps already to foster more what we are doing and also to open questions for the future. And again, I would like to contextualize my intervention always from the direction of what we are doing in research and innovation in agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. As you well mentioned, there are other two colleagues with us from the Commission. So we have the Department of Environment and later the Department of Health and Food Safety that will touch upon those dimensions themselves. So to start with, of course, I need to come with some kind of a statement to contextualize how we really, or at least I believe, and we do so in the building down the road where we work on agriculture policies, where we are pursuing agriculture science as the cornerstone of EU agri-food system policies. And for this, now over a year ago, the Commission delivered, and the college did this, so it was a statement from all the commissioners, the vision for agriculture and food. And this statement comes collecting the ambition to deliver on an attractive farming and agri-food sector for future generations. So we're speaking about future generations, also about how these generations need to address the challenges, but also seize the opportunities that agriculture is pursuing and is being facing today with a view to the future. After this statement, I would like now to come to the different recommendations, and it was an exercise, of course, that I prepared, but I also got some inspiration from the presentations earlier on how, through the context of Horizon Europe, the current research and innovation framework program, when it comes to agriculture, we are providing conditions to address at least some of those recommendations, and perhaps to reflect how in the future we should do more and even consider new ones. So to start with, as regards public investment in research and innovation to generate science, independent science and knowledge. In the current framework from 21 to 27, the Union has doubled its investment in research and innovation in agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. And for the 7-year period of the current MFF, this will come to around 3.3 billion euros. Which is a significant investment into research and innovation in this area, and where this ambition we would like to continue, of course, in the next MFF, which is coming soon. We have, as you know, on the table a proposal for Horizon Europe, call it again the same. We were not very innovative in naming in this case, but also the European Competitiveness Fund. And this ambition to have this level of investment should continue in this next MFF. And for that, we look forward indeed also to the Parliament to provide this strong support for the need to continue investing in research and innovation in these areas. Also, I would like to signal that what we've been doing through research and innovation, and that we plan to do, of course, in the future, is to foster this co-creation environment in Horizon Europe and the future, where with all stakeholders, and we do this with public consultations, we also do this through events, inviting all actors. And please pencil in the 24th and 25th of September this year in Brussels. We will organize the 4th edition of the Agri-Research Conference, where we plan to discuss on the priorities for the future. And this co-creation and involvement of all actors is really an ingredient that we believe is crucial to ensure that the design of the research and innovation priorities and its implementation is done taking into account all voices, not only the voices from the Commission, but starting with a blank page and discussing with all stakeholders. At the same time, I believe we can acknowledge that to some extent we are already doing programming with the endeavor of addressing the systems effect. And to that end, when we look at agriculture, research and innovation activities and policies, we're always looking at the aspect of sustainability in all its three dimensions, the the social, the environmental, and the economic. And we have heard that there are challenges there. Of course, they're interlinked, and sometimes there are trade-offs where at the level of policy require scientific evidence to inform those that have the responsibility to take decisions at the level of policy. So our ambition is that at the level of research, we are already integrating this dimension in the research programming. At the same time, we are also looking at aspects like climate-smart agriculture and biodiversity-friendly agriculture as aspects that we need to mainstream through the research program. And also aspects such as One Health that paid very much attention to how to interconnect through science and through research activities, human, environmental, and animal health in this triad. Also, we look at the aspect of independence and how research and innovation activities stemming from the program are selected on their merit by independent evaluators and independent experts. So it's not the Commission deciding what projects to finance, but are evaluators who are independent, are also assessed against conflicts of interest, the ones that take decisions on what should be the proposals that should receive the funding through Horizon Europe. And this is a very important element that encompasses this aspect of independence, but also excellence, because the excellence is one of the main drivers of the criteria followed by these independent experts, excellent science. As regards convivial principles, I also had a reflection to what extent are we following, and we should do more there. And there, of course, convivial principles are an element that to some extent, again, we are trying to integrate in the current Horizon Europe through fostering social sciences and humanities in the context of research and innovation in agriculture, but also addressing the gender dimension. We have also activities where we try to engage citizens in research. So citizen science is an element that allows for this closer connection with what are the preoccupations, the concerns of the citizens, and making them actual actors in research. So this is an opportunity that we think is contributing to convivial sciences. At the same time, the multi-actor approach, and perhaps you have heard or not about this in the context of agricultural research and innovation, is making sure that from the design of the hypothesis testing, when a proposal is going to be presented to Horizon Europe for seeking funding, all the actors that are, let's say, experiencing challenges on the ground, so the farmers with their local problems that are, of course, of economic nature, but also environmental, social aspects, are involved in the design of the hypothesis of the research activity, and that they are participants throughout the project. So this multi-actor approach is an element that we really would like to further consider in the future as well. And also the aspect of communicating research results, how we are doing that. And in the context of agriculture, one element that has been now for a number of years, more than 10 actually, implemented as a tool for research is the concept of living labs. So living labs like a place for co-creating in the ground the research and innovation solution, and also the lighthouses, like the place for demonstrating how this works. And these are ways to transparently engage with all actors in concrete challenges through a co-creating environment, again, which is one of the drivers. And I would like to mention also very briefly the Mission Soil, which is one of these new actions that came through Horizon Europe that is delivering really a lot on citizens and getting closer to citizens in terms of providing a place for literacy to help citizens understand the value of healthy soils for all aspects that encompass their life. Through food production, ecosystem services, also the value of soil health in cities, for example, is not only connected to agriculture. So this context where citizens are involved in a research context or where they are participants and not only the target is very important as a case study of what we are doing related to the recommendations of your report. In general terms, when it's about data, I think Horizon 2020 already, but more now Horizon Europe, with this concept of open science, is trying to make sure that the data generated through research becomes available soon and openly and freely to all those that would like to access that data whether it's citizens or other researchers that would like to challenge the data with new tests, new ways of interpreting. And to that end also, the implementation of the FAIR data principles is something that very much we are pursuing in that direction, and that we believe is also, again, one of the elements that we need to place in the future. I would like to conclude by acknowledging that the recommendations that you are presenting in the event from the 2025 conference are showing the key importance that we need to give to science as underpinning EU policy making in agri-food systems. And that I would like to also inform you that we're working at the moment in developing what we call a new strategic approach to research and innovation in agriculture, forestry, and rural areas, that we plan to publish by mid this year, by June 2026, addressing all aspects that encompass the innovation ecosystem in Europe, the research and innovation ecosystem, and that where we also think that this should address aspects related to agriculture innovation, including the support for the science needed for risk assessment methodologies, for this independent science that is very much needed to be generated. So with this, I would like to close. And again, thank you very much because this is a true opportunity for us to get inspiration for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vivas-Alegre. I'd like to move on immediately to the next speaker from DG Environment, Ms. Alexandra Vakrou. She's head of unit and the head of the unit's Green Knowledge and Research Hub of Life in DG Environment. Ms. Vakrou.
Thank you also for the invitation to this very interesting and informative event. This is really providing us quite a lot of food for thought, not only in the very well structured recommendations that they take up all the report and all the presentations made last year in your conference, but also with the discussion today that it has benefited by a lot of actors, presence, and key participants with very different roles. From our perspective, we want only to reassure you that at least DG Environment cannot make policy if we don't have science behind us, science and evidence. We are providing a response to environmental policy. We came out recently with all the EU Green Deal proposals. We have a vision, but we cannot do anything and we cannot propose anything if we do not have science underpinning with evidence what we are proposing. But so science and research and innovation is in the DNA of our DG and also our sister DG because quite recently we have split. I was also a young official when DG Environment split to Environment and Climate. And we need all this science not only to make legitimate policy proposals, but also to communicate it to the stakeholders who will continue debating the proposals. We have procedures for this policy making. We have a better regulation agenda where we are taking all this input, not only from science, but also from a variety of stakeholders, including also our citizens. And only then we can really bring something to the table, which is further debated with the Council, with the Parliament, and only then it is becoming a new regulation, a new legislation. We also have a process of reviewing this policy. We have to evaluate them in regular timeframes. We have to go back and see is the situation really the same, or has something changed, or we need to adjust our policy, our tools, our instruments. And we have, in order to do that and to continue providing quite a lot of process, and also we use a systemic way to integrate the opinions of the different actors and the opinions of stakeholders and also scientists. We do have now platforms that they are integrating a wide variety of stakeholders. We do not develop our key policies without taking on board what really concern the European citizens. The same with our colleagues in DG Agriculture, where they embarked in this big vision for European agriculture exercise. We also have done the same for chemical policy, for the circular economy policy, for the nature and biodiversity policy, and also for recently with a water policy, with all the proposals on water resilience. What it is also important for us, it is to communicate these results very clearly, because there is scientific results, but they are not sometimes understandable to their depths. They do not really go back and they cannot really reach the citizens and people that we want really to invite them to have an opinion for the policies. So I would here also make a plea and ask you to consider when you are producing the science that you need to make it more communicative, more explanatory, because we could not really imagine that all the citizens have the same level of understanding, the same level of taking it up and see how these findings of your research will impact him. And in this sense, we need to work more, because more and more recently we see false information. We see information, not that it is not peer-reviewed or that, but based on statements, but communicating them in a very, very profound manner. They penetrate our citizens, and then we have quite a lot of fake news around, a lot of disinformation, and then we have to double even the efforts to provide the right science and the right conclusions. Policy making is also a democratic process, and that's why we need to bring as many people as possible on board. And I will not fully subscribe to the fact that quite a lot of science is being forwarded only by companies, that there are secrets in the scientific results. We have to be independent. There are appropriate safeguards in place. There are demonstrations of conflict of interests. My colleague here spoke about when we do the evaluation that we are bringing independent evaluators to award the projects. We are always, ourselves are extremely sensitive and pay attention to avoid any potential conflict of interest. Not for any other reasons, but when something like that it is detected, we have not observed our accountability, we have not observed our responsibilities, and we have not abide with the conditions that we are making policy. it is true that there are a lot of interactions. The final policy result might not be the best possible result, might not be 100% subscribed by policy results. But that's why we have evaluations. That's why we revisit legislation. That's why we try constantly to see that what we show on the ground is really working and brings the effect positive that we tried to have. But again, I will go back to my first point. I would like to reassure you that at least the European Green Deal has embedded inside not only the precautionary principle approach, but also the polluter principle approach. All the P's, they are there. And we have tried to do our best for this legislation, and we would not have done it if we didn't have benefited from science and evidence, and also from the support of scientific organizations, because I would not exclude in this debate the support that we are getting from the European Environment Agency, who has been mentioned before, but also from other agencies that they are working closely with us, and they are bringing not only independent expertise on the table, not only their knowledge, but also the support from the experts of the member states. And another thing that I will again pay attention to, it is how we communicate the science and how easily we can make it available to everybody and to the citizens, so that they can also themselves engage in the policy debate. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vakrou. And that brings us to the last speaker before the break. He just got in. Welcome. He is Mr. Klaus Berend, is Director of Food Safety, Sustainability and Innovation from DG Sante or DG Health and Food Safety. Mr. Berend, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and apologies that I could only join now, because I was speaking at another event from the European University Institute on MRL setting for pesticides with third countries. And you can imagine that what I heard there is very different from what I hear here, namely that we are way too strict in our decision making, whereas having read your paper, I have the impression that the view of the group seems to be that we are not strict enough and not precautionary enough. So let me start, and I can only comment on your paper because I wasn't here to listen to the debate today. That by echoing a bit what Luis and Alexandra said, that DG Sante, like the rest of the Commission, is committed to science and evidence-based policies. And we as risk managers need thorough assessments of comprehensive scientific evidence as a basis for our decisions. And for that, we rely primarily on our agencies. And in the case of DG Sante, that's primarily the European Food Safety Authority, but also the European Chemicals Agency and the European Center for Disease Control. And they are, their procedures and their way of working is anchored in well-documented processes. They involve high-quality scientific experts. For example, the panels of EFSA are composed entirely of academics after calls for expression of interest. So basically your peers. And the agencies also have strong policies to ensure independence and as a result, opinions and advice that is unbiased and that is not influenced by economic interests or any other vested interests. And when I look at your paper, the report from your meeting in Athens last year, I was a little bit surprised to read that scientific advisors, official scientific advisors, are expected to close down debate in your view, and that that the scientific advice that we receive is often closely aligned with industrial corporations. I am afraid I do not see that in our advice. Quite on the contrary, that we get. We encourage EFSA and ECHA to do what you also ask for, and that you rightly say that scientific consensus is a contradiction in terms. So we encourage them in their opinions and advice to reflect minority views, if there are minority views compared to a majority view. And the example that you refer to when it comes to climate change, I think we all agree here in this room that it's clear where the majority view lies on that topic, but still there is a minority that thinks differently. We follow the majority. The same in other areas, and the example that you mentioned in the paper on the NGTs, the new genomic techniques, where again, we have followed the clear majority view of the experts that provided advice, the multiple EFSA opinions, and also the opinions of a large body of other scientific organizations. So fully subscribe to the fact that consensus is extremely rare and indeed not what science is all about. But as decision makers at a certain point in time, we need also then to base what we propose on what is the clear majority view. And that does not exclude that there are a minority who thinks differently. And as Alexandra rightly said, nothing is cast forever in stone. Things can be challenged, decisions can be challenged and can be re-examined. And if indeed there is new evidence and new knowledge that leads to a different majority view, then the Commission will not hesitate to follow that, just as it followed the first majority view. I was also a little bit surprised to read that, or this very strong criticism of the Commission not for applying the precautionary principle. Here again, in DG Santé, we do, in line with the communication from the Commission from 2001 that explains how it applies the precautionary principle, which might not be exactly as you would like it to be, but we respect the terms that are set out in that communication. And we have taken action on the basis of the precautionary principle on numerous occasions, thinking, for example, of bisphenol A in food contact materials, where there were several rounds of restrictions each time when new evidence came into the discussion. I agree with this, again, with this call that corporate science must be labeled as such, and it certainly is. In all the dossiers that have to be submitted to our agencies as a basis for their scientific work, it is absolutely clear when studies are coming from industry and when they are not. But your call to exclude them completely from risk assessment seems for us difficult to understand. Because the legislation that is the basis for all of this actually explicitly requires that the companies have the duty of producing the evidence that underpins their applications for product authorizations. And also, as Alexandra said, there are mechanisms in place to make sure that the quality of the studies is appropriate, be it via official test guidelines, be it via quality assurance schemes that are also verified and audited. And we have indeed also found cases where such studies were not acceptable and they have then been excluded from the body of evidence, just as studies published in scientific literature had occasionally to be retracted when afterwards it was discovered that they were not exactly in line with the standards that were expected. So very clearly, we believe in the value of science. We do not want to close down a scientific debate or disagreements and always push for consensus. But as risk managers in the areas where DG Santé in particular is responsible, we are obliged to propose decisions at a certain point in time. We cannot wait forever, and we can also not always say, because there is some divergence of views, the only possible answer is a ban. That is not possible. So we are committed to the excellence that you also call for. We are absolutely committed to independence of the advice we get from our agencies, from corporate interests, but also from other interests. But ultimately, we have to take decisions, and they cannot by default, in the light of any disagreement, as you say yourself, there's always disagreement, lead to a negative and to bans. And maybe that's where I stop for now. And obviously, I understand there will still be a chance for further debate today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berend.